Happy New Year. Thank you so much for joining me on another stitching journey. This time we're going to be working on a project called A Little Birdie Told Me. I've made mine into a pillow, but it's an 18-inch quilt block, so you can essentially frame it on its own or even work it into a bigger quilt. Like Mandala Unplugged, it's a completely hand-stitched project, so all you'll need are the basic materials, your sewing materials, your needles that are good for quilting, sewing, embroidery, freezer paper, some interfacing, your rotary cutter, good scissors, you know, that kind of thing. As far as the materials go, if you go to my website, you'll be able to download a PDF of the materials that I've used and how much approximately of each one that you'll need. You don't need a lot of any one thing, so it's a really good project to sort of use up stash and scraps from maybe other projects that you've done. If you are looking for a kit, I still have about a dozen or so on my Etsy store, so you could check those out. See if there's a colorway that you might like. Otherwise, you know, it's one of those projects where you don't have to gather everything all at once. You can start with the bird, you know, pick your background, pick sort of some of the fabrics that you want to use, and then choose as we go along. This will be a 10-week course. You know, but in any event, whether you have a kit or whether you're just building from your own stash, which of course I'm always a proponent of, it feels so good to use up things that you already have. Definitely download that PDF because it's got the templates that we'll be using, and of course we're going to start right in the center with the bird. The bird isn't difficult to do, it's pretty time consuming. If that's not your speed, you definitely can use a piece of fabric that you like, maybe a quilt block that you've made before. On the fabric you could embroider just a few sort of key elements that you want to emphasize. You could put some beads on it. You know, you can make this centerpiece whatever it is that you want to be, whether it's a bird or not. You know, you could do anything you want to. Basically just make sure it's 10 inches so that we have enough room to be able to insert it into the circle of the background fabric, which we'll do next week. But if you are going to join me in coloring this little birdie in, grab about 10 different bird feather type colors of DMC Floss, a 10-inch piece of both muslin and linen, an embroidery hoop, and some embroidery needles, and we will get started. Okay, so before we get started on stitching this bird, I wanted to show you that these birds will come out different every time. Every time I stitch it, it's going to come out different. Everyone's is going to come out different, so don't be too focused on, am I doing this right? You know, basically all this is stab stitch, satin stitch, and long and short stitch. There's nothing really too complicated. We're really just think of it as coloring them in with thread rather than markers. So you can see this is the latest one that I did. And then here's the one that's on the original pillow. He's totally different. He's chubbier. He's more red. So don't, you know, just have fun with it and color it in. Don't worry too much about if you're doing it right, because of course the answer is yes. So what you want to get is make sure that your image, whether it's this bird or whatever bird that you want to do, whatever image you want to do, whatever quilt block or fabric you want to do, will fit inside the 6-inch circle. So we start with a 10-inch square. We're going to stitch this all out, trim it down to 8 inches, but the center design, you know, the essence of your design, you want to make sure will fit into a 6-inch circle. Okay, so to take an original image and turn it into a drawing that you could stitch, there's a couple different ways you can go about it. So this is what I printed out from a program from my iPad called Procreate, where I imported the image of the bird. I lightened it up a little bit, and then I just took my Apple Pencil and I drew, you know, the different sections, different colors, and printed it. And that is what I used for my tracing. But the other thing you could do is just print the image and then take a fine tip Sharpie and do the same thing, just outline the sections. Take another piece of paper and then trace just the lines, and that way you've got this. These are going to be the tracing lines that you'll transfer over to your linen. And linen's a little bit harder to trace on. You know, you can't get a crisp, clean line. So we're not going to be getting all these details in. We're just going to look at that when we're stitching. So here's the tracing, you know, just the basic shapes, if you can see that side by side. And going back to the drawing, of course, I cut his tail off in the photo, so I just extended that and then just drew a branch, you know, just to have him be able to sit on something. So you can see what we're really going for is we're going for proportions and we're going for color blocks. So don't worry about, again, you know, doing every single detail. It'll never transfer over to this linen. This is really all you need is just this guy. And then you can see the lines here. That's how I found the center of my piece, was I just folded it once and then folded it again, and then you've got the little corner, you've got the center point where you can sort of get a rough idea of what the center is. You know, don't go crazy and measure everything. We're going to cut this down to 8 inches, so we've got some room on either side. So just eye it up is fine. And then by the end of the week, hopefully we will have something that looks just like this. So we just turn this drawing right into this guy. And so you know, what I used to trace this was just a micron pen, a skinny little micron pen. It's permanent, it's not going to wash out, it doesn't really matter. We're going to stitch over every single line. That's exactly what I did in this one too. And you can't see any drawing lines. And in fact, even if you can see the shadow of them underneath, it helps define the shape. So even where I went really light under here, I used this micron to trace the lines. So as far as the DMC Floss Colors that you need, you know, I just grab a pile of bird color flosses, but you won't need any more than a yard of these flosses with any of the colors, except for the ones we're going to outline in, which is the milk chocolate and the sand colors. So when I refer to those two colors, make sure you have maybe 2 yards, because like I said, we're going to outline with those. So here's the colors I'll be referring to when we are stitching him out. Find yourself just a little bit of green and sort of a birch color. He's sitting on a birch branch. And then there's black, white, cream, light straw, dark straw, light terracotta, dark terracotta, milk chocolate, dark chocolate, and then sand. So we're going to start with the color sand and milk chocolate to outline the bird. Pretty much we're going to be using 2 strands of floss through the whole thing until we get to the very end where we do the little detail feathers. So go ahead and load up your needle. Now I'm using a Sharps needle. You can really use any kind of needle. What I try to do is stay as small as I can, so I'm not making big holes in the fabric. You know, it glides through the fabric really easy, but the eye is big enough to hold the 2 strands of floss. So this is a size 5. The thing that I do is I'll mix colors. So like I've got a strand of cream and terracotta, light terracotta, a strand of cream and sand, light straw and cream, sand and milk chocolate, sand and cream, you know, just so that when you're actually stitching with them, you're getting the benefit of 2 different colors going in at once. And we'll talk about that as I go, but it's kind of a good idea to just load up. And then I've got some needles with just like 2 strands of terracotta, cream, sand, and straw. And then again, we'll start with the milk chocolate. So load up a few needles just so that they're ready to go, because you will want to mix them up a little bit. It's kind of fun to do that rather than just stay with one same color. I would never be disciplined enough to just do one color and plan it out that much. It's more fun to switch colors, just like you would if you were coloring with markers. Okay, so what we're going to do is start with 2 strands of sand, the ends here, and just hold it parallel with your needle and wrap 1, 2, 3, and just tuck the knot in between your fingers and pull the needle through, and then just tighten that knot. And I'm using, ½ a yard, 18 inches of thread here. All right. So all we're going to do is outline starting at, if you look at the bird, and there's a picture of the original image on my website on the Crosscraft Sundays page that you can refer to, whether it's on your phone or your computer or whatever. I like to always refer to the original photo so I can see where the light is hitting. I do like to look at a digital photo just because it seems like everything shows up really bright. If you print it out, it's fine, but things go flat if you're printing on a matte surface. But anyway, we'll start at the bottom of his beak, and I'm coming up right at the point. And incidentally, I don't know if I mentioned this, but when you hoop your fabric, that piece of muslin is for the back of it. That way no knots show through, no carrying of yarns show through, and it's a nice weight to stitch into. It helps with distortion. You know, we won't get as much distortion. So to outline this bird, we're going to do split stitch. So you're coming up right at the point of his beak, and you're going to go down 1/8 of an inch. Right on the line. And then when you come up, you're going to come up in between the 2 points, you know, your exit and entrance point, and you're splitting that stitch. I know we can do this in one stitch, you know, where you're going across the top and staying horizontal, but in this case, because the bird is so small, we're taking such small little bites of fabric. I'm just going to do stab stitch, you know, stitch up and stitch down. It's just a little bit more precise that way. And then again, that was about 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to come up right in the middle of those. You know, we're at 1/16 of an inch, pretty much where okay. And then 1/8 of an inch from where this last stitch is. Go down. And when you come up in the split stitch, it's almost like you're coming up in the same spot that the previous stitch was going into. You don't have to try to hit it exactly. Again, we're just outlining here. Alright, so you're going to outline the whole bird. Outline from here all the way down his belly to there. And that'll be a good color to outline the sand part in. And then what you're going to do is the exact same method with chocolate brown, milk chocolate. Outline his tail, 2 strands again. Outline his tail all the way up, all the way to that beak. And you could even outline that part of the beak if it makes you feel good. You could do that. Okay, so once you've gotten the outline done in the sand and the milk chocolate, we're going to use black to sort of create this outline, same method. We're going to use that stab stitch. We're going to do his eye. And then maybe just a couple of lines in here. We'll kind of establish that. So let's do his eye first. So basically, I'm just going to do a satin stitch, essentially. It's kind of easier to orient this way, so you know, you could outline it if you wanted to. I'm just going to work a little tiny satin stitch, then a bigger one right underneath it. Just make sure you hit right on the line there, and just sort of fill in that circle. We'll make the same line here. And we'll just pull this out. If you look at the picture, we've got this sort of terracotta wing grouping here, right? And that sort of ends here. And then this black line, you see, we can even mess with our lines a little bit. Like I said, we're covering this all with stitching. So we're going to follow with black this line here and go all the way down. You know, maybe hit some of these a little bit. And that's all what we'll do with black for now. We'll come back with black later, but really we're just trying to outline our sections. The other thing you can do too is even outline it underneath that terracotta wing. See where it's kind of black if you're looking at the picture, and it stops right about there. So really, even while you have black, you could fill that section in and outline it. Okay, so I've gotten to the end of that line here, and what I want to do is just sort of fill this little area in with black, because you can see from the picture it's pretty dark. So I just came up to the top here, and I'm just going to make these lines a little bit longer each time and try to make it look so it's rounded coming around the bottom of that terracotta wing, just right up in here. Pretty much filled in. We'll do one little stitch right there. Alright, and then up here, same kind of thing. There's a little, if you can see that little dark spot. So what we'll do is we'll just sort of stitch inside there. Kind of rounds up a little bit, so we'll, rather than go all the way to the top, we'll split him up. So when I want to do a stitch right next to it coming from, I won't go to the end, I'll always split it. That way you won't see any of the white back underneath there. Do you kind of see that I'm splitting that black stitch? And then coming all the way up to, I suppose, right there. Fill this area in. And let's kind of round this out. This didn't get too rounded. So you can just sort of go anyway, willy-nilly. Alright? Then you can see right up above this terracotta breast here, there's a patch of black. And you can begin, as long as you have black in your hand, to follow the lines and just follow that sort of hump shape. And I didn't want to create too much of a line here because it's like you can see some of the feathers come into that black, so it's best not to do a solid line here and a solid line here. It's best to just work up and down to have little places where the colors of the bird, the more brown, rusty colors of the bird, can come down into the black. And there are just places on the bird where you just don't want to have a solid line, kind of like here. I could have outlined that. I think on my first one I probably did. But really, it's nice when there's some texture there. You know, it's not a solid line, just so that the bird looks more realistic. I'll do one more. One more, sink him in a little bit more. Then you can continue on down from here, splitting that stitch, remember, so none of the white shows in the background. Okay, and then I just wanted to show you too, like, what's happening on the back. I knot it to start a thread, but when I finish, I just sort of weave in trying to go in two places at once, but just weave the thread under a few stitches just to lock it in place so we don't have so many knots on there. Let's start to fill in his tummy there. And you can see in the picture that from this sort of squiggly line back is a lot of the same color, that sand color, this one that we outlined the bird in. These stitches I'm only going to take, I'm going to vary them between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch long. Be mindful too when you're looking at the picture of the direction of which the stitches go. Meaning some of them come down, it looks like a lot of them come down like this, but then there are some stitches under the wing that come down here too. So you want to mimic your stitching so that it's going in the same direction as the feathers, and that will give you the most amount of texture. So here I'm going to sort of follow the line, and I'm going right next to it. I'm not touching that stitch, I'm going right next to the one I put in there. And we're going to do long and short, and that way also it's like if I've stopped right here, you're going to get a definite line. We're going to extend that out a little bit and go just past that. And then the next stitch that we do next to it, maybe we'll go over that black line just a little bit, and that will be shorter here. And this line will be longer. The other thing you want to just be mindful of is, we're going to work, you can see right underneath this part right here is some lighter colors. And, obviously we have white here in the breast, but there are places where we even have some terracotta peeking through. So we don't want to work this so densely that we can't come back in and fill in with some of those kind of iridescent colors to make his breast appear not so flat, that there's actually more going on in there color-wise than what we're showing. And I think that's what it makes the success of a stitching is all the different colors that you use. And even if the colors seem really similar, it's amazing how different they are when you lie them right next to each other, right? So again, I don't want to create such a line here that it looks like it's an actual line. We want that line to blend. Now coming back through on the other side, rather than pick up where the stitch is going into here, see on this long one, we're going to go back a little bit and always split that stitch so that you never get a divot, or you can never see the white fabric behind there. And just play with kind of filling that in. Don't make your stitches any longer in this section than 1/4 of an inch. Up here we're going to do some long stitches just because that's what it appears to be. But down here you can definitely see the texture. So we're going to work this way a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and do that, leave spaces with those colors, and then I'm going to I'll come back and I'll show you sort of how to change direction. I'm going to go long here, even though normally I wouldn't go more than 1/4 of an inch. And you can, it's your choice, you can go over the line that you outlined with this split stitch, just over it, or split it, either way. And that incorporates that sort of bulkier line into the stitching. You have to keep looking at the picture and seeing where the colors are and interpret it the way that you see it. Don't worry so much about right and wrong, and it's going to look like a bird. If we can make the outline look like a bird, yours is going to look like a bird too, so not to worry. And so I'm going to continue to just keep filling in till about right there. Then the feathers start to kind of come down a little bit, so we'll kind of start to angle things in, and then you can see that these overlap, so it may be that I start coming up here and then making them meet in the middle. Okay, so then as you can see, I filled in all these little places with sand, right, even back here, and then I kind of went up this little breast and just outlined here. Still lots of room to pop in lots of different colors. So the first thing we're going to do is fill in with shadow. So I've got a strand of sand and a strand of dark chocolate. And I'm just going to begin to, where I see a black line, a real dark feather, just sort of put some stitches in so that we can see some darkness, maybe down underneath here. This looks like it stays pretty white. So you just kind of have to refer to the picture. We've got some darkness going on in here. And then just like a few dark lines, just so you can see there's multi-layers. It doesn't have to be exact, we're just giving a little nod to the fact that this guy has multi-layers of feathers, is all. And what's nice about the different, using the one strand of each color, is it's not such a harsh line there. Okay, so you can kind of see where I put some dark in here, right in here above where the white is, and then just a little bit in up and through here. So now if you look really close, you can see kind of that iridescent rust color. I'm just going to fill in some of these places with a double strand of that color. Also making sure that I'm leaving some space for the white, the cream, which we'll be doing next. So, and then on top of here, I'm going to probably throw in a few stitches of this light terracotta. And now what I have is a strand of cream and sand. So I'm going to start to fill in almost all of the spaces in all of these where it appears really light on the bird. And then I'll probably come back in with just cream alone and then really highlight it and maybe just the tiniest bit of white. But, and then also you can see there's some light straw in there, so I may come in with the light terracotta and the light straw, but I'll decide that and then just let you know as I'm stitching along. Okay, so I've got all the light places in, and now where it's really light, right in here, I'm going to go in and just put a nice even row of just cream stitches, a little bit up and through here and a little here. Next thing I'm going to do is outline these individual wings with a strand of terracotta light and one of dark. These lines here are really crisp, so I don't want to do a bunch of little stitching. What I want to do is just have one big clean line. So I'm going to come up here, and then right next to this black, as far down as I can, just have a nice line like this. Then come down where the next stitch is going to be, but we want to shove all that black aside. Go into the stitch, but remember not where the stitch is coming out, but just a little bit up, and split the threads and go down. Black aside. And then back down into that previous stitch. Okay, and then on the second one, come up, go all the way down until the curve. Let's go down a little further. It's a nice long stitch. And then just give it a couple stitches down here so we can curve it. Okay, and then once you're done with that, on the left side of the line, sort of in towards each wing, take 2 strands of the dark terracotta and do exactly what you did, but just run it along these lines here. So it kind of looks like that orange color is blending out and fading as the feather is getting lighter, you know, on the outside of the feather. So exactly what you did here, you'll be doing with dark terracotta on this side, you know, on the left side of everything. So on the other side of where we did the terracotta light and dark, we're going to just throw one line of black in there. Here, I'll do this one, you can see it better. But rather than take it all the way down here in one line, let's get some stitching in there. We'll just do half again, just to get some texture in there, because then we're going to fill in with the rest of the, we're going to fill in the rest of the little wings with dark brown, and we're going to do some long and short satin stitching, just like we're doing here. And then here, if you look at the picture, you can see that there's a black long line. Go ahead and just do the long line. So it'll look like this. All the way. Looks like it only goes about halfway, so there. Okay, it's a very graphic place, so what you want to do is just make sure that this stays parallel to that first line you did. Just hold it in place so you know where to stick the needle, like this. And then again, you want this to run parallel to those other wings, and then just continue working the black lines here, and then fill in the rest of these wings. We'll worry about all this back stuff later, but let's just work on this. Fill in the rest of these wings doing long and short stitch with the chocolate brown. Basic wings now are all filled in, dark brown. We got the black and the terracotta. We're going to go back and highlight and darken with one strand later, just to get, like I said, just get those feathers in. So now I have a strand of light straw and a strand of cream. And again, we're going to fill in these little gaps here. We'll take a little bit shorter stitches, you know, maybe half of what we've done. They're wider up here, so we're going to take 2 stitches side by side and then just 1 coming down. Pop a little bit of the cream straw color in here because there's some yellow in his breast. So maybe just right here. And then we're going to work this section, just work a satin stitch up and down, just be mindful of the shape, and just work that all the way to here. And a satin stitch is just 1 stitch after the other. Now, since the tail's underneath, let's go ahead and work on that next. I've got a strand of brown and a strand of black, and I'm just going to work some long lines, you know, pull keep it dark underneath this sort of edge, go all the way out, and then just sort of fill in with the chocolate brown, the milk chocolate, and a little bit of the straw color, and just sort of mimic the lines and make it look feathery. You know, there's really no rhyme or reason here, just a few dark, few medium, few light, just to give some contrast and keep those stitches really long. So now we're going to work on his back feathers, and I've got to draw in a few more things. I didn't quite get all the details, but it looks kind of like, if you look at the picture, we've got these wings that are kind of coming from here, and they fold into here. So just looking at the drawing again and the picture at the same time, you know, maybe I'm making another wing right there that folds into this one. There's a really long couple of them here. This one sort of folds up into that. Yeah, so we're just doing these alternating feathers. So what we're going to do is kind of that same thing, take that terracotta light and dark, and then just, I think what we're going to do here, though, is maybe not such long stitches. We'll take them half again, you know, stitch your way down, just because there's a lot of different curves here, and 1 long stitch won't really do. We need to nail those in. So we'll work the light terracotta, dark terracotta, and then again we'll do the dark terracotta just to mimic that color in. So once you have the terracotta wings defined, now we can start to fill in these spaces with, mostly I'm going to do it with a strand of black and brown. Where it's really dark, I'll probably put more black in just to define them. There's a line that comes down that's pretty dark. These are dark under here, so I'll be doing probably more black than brown. I might just go ahead and fill in some black under here just so that there's a shadow for where this wing is overlapping. Okay, so now that we've filled in the wings, you can see in the picture there's places where we've got that straw color. So I've got a dark terracotta and a light straw, and I'm just going to go in and highlight some of these wings, you know, fill in these gaps, highlight maybe here and maybe a few places there, and that'll sort of bring that lighter color in, and then we'll go ahead and work these feathers up in here right below his head. Okay, he's all highlighted up in here now, so I'm going to go back to the drawing, to my picture. I added a few more lines in here. We're going to make this section up here, we're going to follow sort of what we did down here with the 1/4 inch stitches, short and sort of textury. So what I've drawn is just some lines to kind of help me stay within a color guideline. So here, you know, we've got this light color, and then we've got dark coming up to there, so I know I want to stay pretty dark in here. And then I'm just looking at the picture as I draw this out. Got some red in here, and then the black coming down. And then some dark here. So just alternating between choppy little red and straw stitches and some dark brown stitches up in here, and then here is mostly dark brown with a few highlights, and then here stay pretty pretty light. So just follow the lines with the pictures that you have, and then we'll color this in. This is going to be sand and dark chocolate, and then we'll do some dark chocolate just here. You can see there's a little line of dark right there. And then we'll be ready to do his head. Okay, great. So his body's all done for now until we get our single strands in for the details. So now what we're going to do is work the details of his head. So we've got that light line that's coming down, sort of shaped like an A here. And we're going to start that with light straw and light terracotta. And then as we come down, I'm going to switch it to straw and cream, just because it's highlighted a little bit more here. And just work the stitches, you know, 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. We're going to stack them this way because that's the way it looks like the feathers are running. So I'm going to do that. I've got a little bit of brown I must have had when I was outlining. I probably just did that little guy there. And then might start taking that brown in and then working it up into sand. So once you get that light line in, make your little V there so you can fill in here. I did milk chocolate and sand above here where it's a little darker, where I had that milk chocolate. And now I'm just going to do sand. I'm just going to fill this in, kind of make my stitches sort of choppy, sort of feathery, you know, 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. Run these this way. His head's pretty smooth, so you can just kind of run it down this line. And then kind of tucked in here, we're going to do some more sand. And then we'll lighten it up as we get further. Probably put some sand in here too. And then I'll just keep showing you the progress of the bird's head as I switch colors. So I filled in his head with the sand. Kind of came around down here, popped some sand in here. Few spots down just above his little collar. A little bit on the beak, a little bit in here. So now I'm going to do sand and cream where it's real light in here. Fill some in here around his eye. That line of white that comes here, that light white. And a few stitches in here, and then I'm going to switch to sand and dark straw and fill in all the rest of this. Maybe a few little feathers in here. Okay, and then the last little bit on his head, once you get all that filled in with the straw and the cream and the sand, is I've got a strand of black and dark chocolate. I'm just going to, where his head is real dark right here on the top of his beak, kind of under his beak, just filling in some of these sort of underneath dark feathers. I'll probably throw in a couple down here too, just for some definition. And then grab out your light terracotta and cream, and we'll work the beak and the feet. So with the beak, I just used the terracotta colors and worked horizontally just to get that shine on that. Same with the feet. Sort of fill in the spaces with the cream and the light terracotta, and then just take a dark terracotta and work just some coloring in the background, like in his back foot. Alrighty, so now that we've got the little bird stitched out, now we can begin to put some of the highlights in, or the sort of the really fine details in. So all I've done here was I've just taken some of that black line and split this wing so it kind of looks like this wing is more feathery than just a straight line. So I'll show you what I mean. Just go back in here. And you can just do this in a few places, kind of where this wing is. So I'm just splitting this. One tiny little line. There's little beak is. That makes all the difference. And then his eye, just kind of keep building around that, and we're going to put a little white sparkle in. So I think just with the black, the white, maybe some straw, some highlight colors, just go in and kind of look at your picture, just see where there needs to be more detail brought in. You're working in around his face. You can see there's kind of a black line that goes from his beak sort of up, so where we did that chocolate brown, you can put a little line of black. Just those details, it makes all the difference. down in through here where we put all that white fur. You can see where there's a few lines. It would have been too thick to do the 2 strands, so we're just going to do 1. Make it look more like lots of layers of feathers. Put one in this light area right here. So just take, 1 strand of black and sort of work yourself around the bird and get those little details in, and then I'm going to take the piece of light straw and just 1 strand, just kind of do his collar here, and I'll show you what that looks like. Probably do some white in here, through here, maybe a few highlights on his head, but this is where you can, down here, we can get some of the black coming up in here so it looks like it's actual feathers, kind of like what we're doing in here, and that's how you can get the details into the bird. So we're going to do the branch. Basically that is pretty simple. It's just a satin stitch. So come up at a line, come down at the line. Every once in a while, leave a spot where we can throw in some white up at the top and some black lines. I'll show you the one I finished. Basically just did the branch color, left some spaces, went back and highlighted just through the whole thing. And then when you come up at the branches, it's just a split stitch again like we did to outline the bird. Just make sure you go on the other side of the drawn line so you don't see the pen mark. And again, you may see just a little bit before, but it's kind of nice to, it looks like a shadow. All the way up. Right, and just work your satin stitch, and again, just leave those spaces for blacks and whites. To do the branches, you could do a stem stitch here. Just do a split stitch. It's just as easy. Remember to come up right in the middle of that stitch. Okay, and then to do the leaves, it's just a double strand of green. And it is just a little single lazy daisy stitch. So go in. And just finish that off. And then a couple of the leaves where I wanted something more substantial. Just come up on the side, go on the side and poke right at the base of it, and just go down just so it looks like it's an extra little growth there. Kind of gives it something extra. And he's pretty much done. When you're working with a white and you're highlighting, don't forget to put a couple little sparkles in his eye. I'm not sure if I mentioned that before. But as you can see, these birds that I've done, I have 3 of them now, are totally different. And yours will be too. So it's great because nobody's going to have the same bird. And the way I like to look at it is we just took a line drawing and Bob Rossed a bird right out of it. So send pictures when you complete yours. Throw them on the Facebook group called Mandala Unplugged. And I'll show them on the next video like we did before. So happy stitching, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much.